Hey guys, welcome back to my video. Today I'm going to explain the origin of Talbot Grimes, aka the Blight. Make sure to like and subscribe. And let me know who I should cover next. To understand the human condition, one must rise above it. This was the credo of Talbot Grimes, a Scottish chemist whose unrestrained ambition took him to towering heights. As a boy, he was a popular child, bright, charismatic, and unafraid to challenge authority. Yet despite his social graces, he was fiercely independent, spending much of his time exploring the sprawling fields near his town alone. What began as a child's curiosity nearly turned deadly after experimenting with a patch of poisonous foxglove. For days, he laid in bed dripping with sweat, purging any food that touched his stomach. When he recovered, it wasn't fear that gripped him, but fascination. There was something magical in how a single flower could so drastically affect him. Into his adult years, his ambition developed as quickly as his questionable methods. He attended the London School of Medicine and excelled despite several reprimands. His willingness to push the limits secured him a position with the British East India Company. And within 7 years he was made head chemist. In time, he completed one of his greatest achievements: a chemical that could increase a worker's productivity while reducing their need for rest. He was rewarded with a secret laboratory beneath a prison camp on Dyer Island. There, off the coast of India, prisoners from the Opium War became his unwilling subjects, leading to a drug that allowed soldiers to withstand incredible amounts of pain. Though most side effects were minor, there were rumors that a small number of soldiers went mad. In feral states, they massacred villages, impaling the populace on bayonets, leaving them hanging from trees. There were no official reports on the subject, and Talbot refused to blame himself for what could only be exaggerated war stories. Though his callous brilliance seemed unflappable, he was ignorant to the enemies his questionable work had amassed. The realization struck him quite literally with a steel pipe to the back of his head during a trip to Mangalore. He was bound and loaded into a wagon. When his blindfold was removed, a sickly man showed him a mass grave filled with hundreds of bodies. Unbeknownst to Talbot, his productivity-increasing drug had killed nearly an entire factory's worth of workers. He knew he couldn't defend himself against the anger and accusations of his abductor. All he could do was curl up as the blows from the steel pipe rained down. His body was thrown into the grave and left for dead. Shifting between consciousness and the darkest black, he crawled for an escape, fingers sinking into rotting flesh. Black flies feasted on his uncovered skin, the sensation of 100 pin pricks stabbing into him. As he collapsed, he came face to face with a dead woman's dazzling hazel eyes. Too weak to pull away, he could do nothing but witness his life's work. Then, from the edge of death, he was brought back. He found himself on a small bed as a kindly, wrinkled face looked over him. With each pained breath, he was nursed back to health in an ancient mystery school posing as a monastery. In verdant gardens behind tall, unassuming walls, monks studied forbidden texts, striving to expand the human mind in the search for other dimensions, believing one to be connected to the other. Talbot's knowledge proved indispensable, his mind-altering chemicals integrating seamlessly with theories of neural expansion. He realized then that his salvation was no coincidence. He was plucked from the pit specifically to advance the school's knowledge. He agreed to help until his recovery was complete, being tasked with researching what the monks called the soul chemical, a compound derived from the pineal gland that could open the mind's eye. What began as a favor to his saviors, soon became an obsession. Poring over the school's archives of lost texts, he uncovered scientific formulas that confirmed previously unthinkable ideas. He dreamt of ushering humankind into a new period of enlightenment. Perhaps then, the nightmares of hundreds of dead factory workers, and of those two hazel eyes, would fade from his mind. As he came closer to a breakthrough, the demeanor of the monks shifted. The gentle smiles they offered were paired with uneasy eyes that quickly darted away when spotted. The polite conversations he was once privy to turned to hushed murmurs. The last thing he would see of the school was the cracked ceiling above his bed, branching like a dendrite through plaster. His next memories were a shattered mosaic of images and sensations. Smearing lights, horse hoofs on cobblestone, coarse burlap scratching at his cheeks, and sharp bites into his arm. He awoke ragged and unwashed, splayed on the straw mattress of an opium den. Mind in a dense fog, his first thought was of his notes, the only record of his groundbreaking revelations. He searched frantically, scrambling through the dingy basement, pleading aloud for help. The few other denizens looked up from their hammocks, offering nothing but drug-soaked eyes and apathetic gazes that soon fell into half-slumber. Before he noticed the robed figure appear behind him, a needle plunged into his arm and the world disappeared once more. Awoken. Again. Each time, hazier than the last. He tongued at hollow gaps between his teeth. How long, he wondered. A faint memory returned. The soul chemical. His notes. The verge of a breakthrough. A faraway whisper entered his mind. He fumbled with a stone, sharpening it with shaking hands. In the dim light of the den, amongst the catatonic occupants, he carved his research from memory into the walls. He wrote for hours until his fingers bled, moving to the floor, taking in everything the voice whispered despite his inability to comprehend it. When there was nowhere left to write, he gripped the stone and carved the message into his chest. Stained with blood, he witnessed a miracle appear before him, a magnificent field of lush, orange flowers. The whispered voice beckoned to him, urging him to enter the field and discover worlds and dimensions beyond human comprehension. For a moment, Talbot felt the sense of wonder he possessed as a child. The denizens of the opium den awoke to silence, the dry scent of smoke still lingering in the air. Shambling out of their drug-hazed fog, they found the stone floor wet with blood, tiny rivulets coursing through the cracks. As eyes adjusted to the darkened room, the jagged lettering scrawled along its length began to appear. Written over and over without end, there was but one single line: "Death is only the beginning." After Talbot Grimes enters the void. Once he entered the void willingly, he knew he had made a mistake. Now trapped forever, he set out to find a way to escape. He traveled across different realms in an out-of-bounds area before he found an abandoned shack. In it he found a journal from a man named Virgo. Virgo was studying the pulsatilla flower, and Talbot was so fascinated by Virgo's work he picked up where he left off. Talbot began doing experiments with pulsatilla flower nectar that came every Halloween. When the entity was weak because of a disease called the Blight. And if this flower was used right, it could be used to escape and make portals and give the subject inhuman powers. Talbot was not safe, though he was always chased by killers away from the lab. And during one attack the killer injured his arm. Even though his arm was messed up, he went back to the lab anyways because he was obsessed with leaving. During one of his experiments he injected a rat with Blight. The rat came back and bit Talbot in his arm, injecting him with Blight. This is when he became addicted to it. After the rat bit him, he soon went insane. He lost his memories and everything about Talbot Grimes was disappearing one at a time. When the killer who messed up his arm returned, Talbot attacked him and chained him to a cell under the lab. Then Talbot blacked out. When he woke back up, the killer was screaming and crying, but Talbot was fascinated with the power he felt when he attacked the killer. This is when he started performing the experiments on the killers. He injected himself with Blight to get more of the power he felt when he fought the killer. His addiction to the substance got worse and worse every day. Because of how strong he was, any killer who he fought didn't stand a chance. Over the course of the Blight he made 32 serums. The Blight was about to be over and Talbot was running out of time. He made one last serum called Compound 33. And hoped he would have escaped the realm, but it didn't work. He quickly ran back to the lab and stated it up again and made another serum before he got caught by the entity. After the entity caught Talbot, he got sent to the void to rot. But somehow he survived the void. He was in the void for an unknown amount of time. Confused and terrified, and had hallucinations of him getting killed hundreds of times. And he pleaded with the entity for nectar, and the entity put him in trials as a killer and a survivor. The entity saw his potential as a killer and put him in a field of dying people, giving him a weapon and said if he killed all the people he would get his serum. And Talbot did it without a question. He pleaded with the entity to give him the serum now, and out the nowhere he was surrounded by the mystics. He said they were the reason he was there to suffer. Then the entity grabbed his legs with his tendrils and injected him with the serum. Finally he got what he always wanted, but the entity didn't stop. He kept on injecting him with it until he had a severe overdose and he mutated into the Blight. After that he was dropped into a trial, unable to do anything but endure trail after trail just for one more drop of nectar. Nobody knows if Talbot Grimes is still in there. All we know is he's the Blight for now. I hope you guys liked the video and let me know who I should cover next. Don't forget like, subscribe, and leave a comment.